All right, welcome back to reservation number 6, network security. Can Bitcoin be hacked? We're in a 7-part series, and if you haven't seen the first 5 episodes so far, I'd encourage you to go back and check those out as well, but because they all kind of build on each other. But today, we are talking about Bitcoin's network security. I'm your host, Hodler Ranch, and this is Bitcoin and Tech Wealth Edge. Thank you for joining. So let's dive right into the network security. So, a question I still get asked a lot, and I've had this question asked since 2017 or even before: how secure is Bitcoin really? So we're going to discuss that. We're going to discuss a few other things. What is encryption? What is Bitcoin mining? We'll touch briefly on these. We won't go too far into detail on here. I want to keep it related and on topic. We'll talk about proof of work versus proof of stake and why that's important. And then the question that everybody wants to know: can it be protected against quantum computing? So we're going to dive into that. So as an overview, Bitcoin's security relies on what's known as cryptographic algorithms. Okay, you may have heard it described as complex math problems that mining machines are solving. That's not actually true. It's easier to use that analogy, but just to give you an idea of how much power, though, is being put into this, and we talked about the energy that Bitcoin uses as one of the topics last time. Proof of work right now, as of today, September 8th, 2025, is using 1039.9 exahash per second. So that number is just extremely large. We're not used to dealing with numbers like that. Our human mind cannot even comprehend that. You have a 1 followed by 21 places here, all right? So over 1 quintillion, that number is just astronomically large. That is what is happening per second on the Bitcoin network. So the cost to do all that, just in hardware alone, would cost you like $9 billion. So you say, well, there's plenty of states or governments or bad actors that have $9 billion. Why couldn't they go out and hack Bitcoin? But then you have to add the $10 billion for energy, and you say, okay, that's still like not even $20 billion. That for nation states, that's a drop in the bucket, a rounding error. They could go and hack it. Well, then you'd have to then you'd have to keep that up, and you'd have to have enough energy to do that. And that's what makes it so great that Bitcoin is, in order to get that 51%, you're going to need an intense amount of energy, as we can see here. And from all the stuff that's going on in the AI and HPC world right now, you have iron that's a Bitcoin miner going into doing the AI, because companies that are running, like NVIDIA and companies like ChatGPT, OpenAI, Grok, all those LLMs use an immense amount of energy to run. And so they don't even have enough to run ChatGPT right now. So they can't even put up things fast enough. I was on a call last night where it takes like 5 years to stand up one of these type of data centers to be able to handle all this. So it's just really infeasible. It would take years and years and years and years for them to set it all up. So it's not just the cost. It's important that you realize that. It's just the feasibility of running that much power. It doesn't exist. Again, which is what makes Bitcoin, as of today, unhackable. We talked about cryptographic strength. It uses an elliptical curve for signatures, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. And then it's known as the SHA-256. And to this day, again, classical computers aren't able to hack it. You also have 100,000 nodes running globally. I myself run one right here from my house. That ensure that there's no single point of failure on the Bitcoin network. So you can't just attack one computer, one mainframe. You can't say, oh, I got the mothership, or I'm taking the president. Like, you can't do that. because we all are running Bitcoin. Then on top of that, you have this difficulty adjustment. So like if everybody put all that kind of effort into trying to hack or take over 51% of the system mathematically gets harder and more difficult every 2016 blocks, which is roughly every 14 days. So if all of a sudden you did go out and get all that power and you somehow were to hook it up and have the energy for it, right? You went through all those hoops and you had that actually going after years of getting to that point. Well, then all of a sudden it would get that much harder just to solve the next block, right? And so I can't undermine how or understate how secure the Bitcoin network is. All right. Encryption. Remember I said earlier we have this elliptical curve. So it's basically given point P, Q equals K times P. I don't want to get into all the math with this, but just know that on an elliptical curve, it's very easy to establish where the public key is. Okay? That's like your home address. That's fine. You would never give your private key, which would be the lock that unlocks your front door. Like, it's okay that people know where you live. You can get mail delivered. Visitors can come over. But we don't want anybody just walking in the front door. And this elliptic curve just shows you that the point for the private key can be anywhere on here, any number of integers. And again, the numbers are so mind-bogglingly large. It just gives you a visualization, though, as to what is happening on the backside to protect the private key from ever getting out. Okay, mining, just real briefly on mining. It's the process where new Bitcoins are created and transactions are then verified. And then once that batch of transactions is verified, it gets added to the blockchain. That happens about once every 10 minutes. The mining company or person that's running that machine, that ASIC, that application-specific integrated circuit is what they're just known as ASICs for short. So just picture large warehouses with thousands and thousands of these ASICs running, and one of them wins the lottery every 10 minutes, right? And they get to post that transaction, they get to add that block to the chain, and more importantly, they get the block reward, which is currently 3.125 Bitcoin. So that's about $350,000 in today's value, plus the fees that are involved in each of the transactions. So it's a highly lucrative, but also highly competitive business. So going through all this is called the proof of work. Okay? And just simply a hash is a fixed length string of characters generated by a cryptographic hash function, which takes an input, like a block of data, and produces a unique output. And in Bitcoin, the SHA-256 algorithm is what's used to create these so-called hashes, which, again, just ensure the data integrity and security of the network. So if I was going to hash the input Bitcoin, if you type Bitcoin into a SHA-256, what do you think that produces? Any guesses? No, it's okay. It's ridiculous. Yeah, all of us would have guessed D79, whatever that is, that long output. So that output is what Bitcoin quote would be from the output of the SHA-256. So it takes something very simple there and makes it very complex, and vice versa. When we know the input, the output is very, very easy to verify. This is comparable to like when you did math homework in high school or college and you struggled all night trying to figure out that one problem, but then you got to class the next day and the professor took 5 to 10 minutes to write it on the board and explain it, and then all of a sudden it just like made sense very quickly. That's kind of how this works, right? If you know the input, the output is very easy to verify. Like once you see it, you're like, yes, that's the answer. But conversely, just because I know where you live doesn't mean I have the key to your house, right? That is impossible to find as we stand today. So it's a one-way process. That one-way process ensures Bitcoin's security. Let's talk about proof of work versus proof of stake. And the question I have in the bottom here is which side of the chart looks more like the system we grew up using, right? So the aspect proof of work. Okay, this is what Bitcoin uses. Proof of stake is what many other cryptocurrencies and tokens use, including Ethereum. The mechanism is, again, that hash block data to meet the target. So that's all that large number that we talked about before, that incredibly large number going into it, versus what's happening on the proof of stake side. This is really important that you get this. Instead of using energy and instead of people putting power behind it, all they have to do is put money behind it. So they have what's called validators. So instead of miners, these validators are, and a lot of these chains use like 10 or 12 validators around the world. So they say it's decentralized, it's not with one person. Yeah, well, it's still with 12 people. And if I have enough coins on that chain, then I have, in theory, that much more power. So these validators have an overwhelming amount of power relative to somebody who's holding a small amount. So if I hold a small amount of Ethereum, I have a small amount of power. Really no power if I'm not staking any of it. And if I had millions of Ethereum and I wanted to stake that, then I would have a lot of power and a lot of say behind the network. So you say, well, doesn't that mean the same thing in Bitcoin? No, it doesn't. Not at all. This is where a lot of people get confused. Bitcoin, so Michael Saylor and Strategy are now, almost 650,000, we'll call it, Bitcoin. That is more than 12 times now the closest competitor to them of anybody that's stacking Bitcoin on their treasury sheet. Just because they have that much doesn't mean that Michael Saylor and Strategy have any more say in how the Bitcoin networks run. Again, it's all done by all these ASICs, these thousands of machines that are highly powered, running all over globally. So whether I have one Satoshi, one full Bitcoin, or a Nakamoto, which, by the way, a Nakamoto is 1 million Bitcoin. If I have 1 million of the 21 million, I still don't have any more power than you do if you have one Satoshi. And that is what's so great about Bitcoin as well. So again, because of this, it's so much more decentralized than it is on the proof of stake side. So I'll let you decide for yourself. To me, the answer is pretty clear, though, that proof of work does not mirror the system we grew up in, our legacy financial system, right? But proof of stake sure does. Anytime you can have a few people have an abnormal amount of power, that sounds familiar to me. Okay, we're going to end this on quantum resistance because I know everybody wanted to hear about this. This is very interesting, by the way. Something about quantum is they need millions of qubits to break this elliptical curve, that ECDSA that I have up there. That's that curve that we showed you earlier with the math that we didn't really want to get into and confuse everybody with, thankfully. That's a lot of qubits. Just to give you an idea, and that, by the way, that's stable qubits. In quantum computing, the biggest challenge is not only getting the qubits up and going, but maintaining the stability before it breaks down. Okay, and once it's observed, right, that's it. And if there's errors, there's a high error rate in all these. Like if there's an error, then you're simply not going to be able to. It's not going to be feasible to hack Bitcoin. Okay. Now, however, I will say if you had millions of qubits, right, which would require about 2 billion, because to get the stable version of that actually could compute so quickly the key, the private key of someone, you would need about 2 billion qubits to get enough to make that happen. And that would need to stay going for about 10 minutes. Right now, you can see the list of the top folks on here. You have Foxtail in 2016 with 22 qubits. Bristol Cone in 2018 with 72 qubits. Sycamore in 2019 with 53 qubits. And then most recently we saw Google's Willow last year break the 100 qubit barrier, which is really awesome. I mean, kudos to them. That's great that they've got 100 qubits, but 100 qubits is a far cry from 2 billion, right? And a microsecond is a far cry from holding it for 10 minutes or however long it would need to be able to hack Bitcoin. So, why do we say all this? Yes, in theory, with a quantum computer, if you could get enough qubits and you could keep it running long enough before it broke down and didn't have errors, you could hack Bitcoin. At that point, you'd be able to hack the CIA, you'd be able to hack Fidelity, JP Morgan Chase, everything could be hacked. So I think there'd be a bigger fish that people would go after. But rest assured, in the Bitcoin community, you remember a few episodes ago we talked about can Bitcoin be changed? And one of the ways that that's introduced is through a BIP. And there are BIPs on the table right now. It's already being discussed. So even though it's years away from becoming a reality, I am glad that it's being taken serious. We should take it serious. We should discuss it. We should come up with the way to do a, quote, quantum upgrade. So when the time comes, we'll be ready. We don't want to be scurrying at the last minute to adjust to significant progress, because we know things happen very, very quickly. But that's why I have this chart up here. And as that's when I start to see that scale to the 100,000 range, then I'm going to start to say, okay, guys, this is when we really need to, as a community, come together and take it very seriously. So glad that it's being discussed right now. Also thankful that it's a long way off. But it is an interesting topic. So let me know what you think in the comments. Please like and subscribe. Thank you so much for joining. Next time we will be on our 7th and final reservation that people have towards Bitcoin, and that is Bitcoin's lack of acceptance. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.